You know what they say about perfect families? They're usually hiding the ugliest secrets. The camera catches me adjusting my daughter's tiny ponytail as she skips ahead of me into what looks like a perfect suburban backyard. American flags flutter, the grill is smoking, and classic rock plays softly. I'm Melanie, and this is the story of how one 4th of July barbecue turned into the beginning of my family's complete destruction, and how I made sure my abuser paid the ultimate price. Hit subscribe right now because by the end of this story, you'll understand why revenge served cold is the most satisfying dish of all. The sun was scorching that July 4th, and the backyard reeked of charcoal, beer, and decades of buried resentment. I'm 27, a single mom and social worker, and apparently still the family scapegoat after all these years. My brother Ryan was the crown prince, former quarterback, current professional disappointment, living rent-free in our parents' guest house while planning his so-called political future. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs just to keep my daughter Piper and me afloat, constantly enduring passive-aggressive comments from mom like, "Are you sure social work is a real career, honey? Maybe if you smiled more." This wasn't new. Growing up, Ryan could do no wrong. When he broke neighbors' windows playing baseball, Dad would laugh and say, "Boys will be boys." When I got straight A's, it was, "Don't get too big for your britches." When Ryan got arrested for underage drinking, they blamed his friends. When I came home 5 minutes past curfew, I was grounded for a month. The pattern was set early. Ryan was the golden boy who could fail upward, and I was the disappointment who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Even now, at 27, nothing had changed. That day started like every family gathering, me doing all the work while Ryan nursed his 3rd beer before noon. I'd arrived early to help set up, bringing folding chairs from my car, arranging the condiment table, and making sure there were enough paper plates. Ryan rolled out of the guest house around 11 a.m., already buzzed, complaining that the music was too loud even though he'd been the one to turn it up. I'd brought homemade pasta salad that 5-year-old Piper had helped me make the night before. She was so proud, having stirred those noodles with her tiny hands, carefully adding the diced vegetables I'd cut for her. She kept telling everyone who would listen, "I helped make the salad. I stirred it all by myself." Ryan took one bite and literally spat it onto the grass, right in front of Piper. "This tastes like your attitude. Bland and unnecessary." Mom giggled like it was the funniest joke she'd ever heard. Dad kept grilling without even looking up. And my 5-year-old daughter watched her uncle humiliate her mother like it was entertainment. But it got worse. Ryan started telling stories about my dating life, or lack thereof, making jokes about how desperate single moms probably couldn't cook because they were too busy chasing after any man who'd pay attention. Every barb was designed to cut, and my family laughed along like a Greek chorus of cruelty. I tried to keep my mouth shut. I really did. But when Ryan started talking about how maybe Piper needed a real father figure, because clearly I wasn't providing proper guidance, something snapped inside me. "At least I didn't get fired from 3 jobs in 1 year, I said, my voice cutting through his laughter. The yard went silent. The classic rock kept playing but everything else stopped. Dad finally looked up from the grill. Mom's smile froze on her face. Ryan's face turned that dark red color I remembered from childhood, the color that meant someone was about to pay. "Say that again," he growled, standing up slowly, the beer bottle still in his hand. I should have backed down. I should have apologized and smoothed it over like I always did. But I was tired. Tired of being the target. Tired of watching my daughter witness this dysfunction. Tired of pretending this was normal family behavior. "Why? So you can punch your way out of the truth like you always do." That's when he lunged at me with pure hatred in his eyes. He slammed me to the ground so hard I saw stars. The crack of my nose breaking echoed across the lawn like a gunshot. Blood poured down my face, warm and metallic, dripping onto the grass beneath me. Piper's screams pierced the air, pure terror from a 5-year-old who just watched her world explode. And here's the sickest part. My mother ran to him, not to me bleeding on the grass. "Oh my God, baby, are your hands okay?" she shrieked, cradling his knuckles like he was the victim. That was self-defense. Melanie always provokes you. She knows how to push your buttons. I was lying there with blood streaming down my face, watching my daughter cry, while my family treated my attacker like a wounded hero. Dad finally approached, but not to help me, to tell Piper to go play inside while the adults figure this out. Like domestic violence was just another family disagreement to sweep under the rug. I got up on my own because nobody helped. I grabbed napkins from the picnic table, pressed them to my bleeding nose, and walked inside to lock myself in the bathroom. The mirror showed a stranger, swollen, bruised, bleeding, betrayed. In that moment, staring at my reflection, something died in me that day. The part that still believed family meant something. The part that thought love was supposed to protect you. But something else was born. Something much more dangerous. My friend Angela picked me up within 10 minutes of my desperate phone call. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed a nasal fracture and asked the question I was dreading. "Do you want to file a police report?" As I sat there with Piper clinging to me like a frightened bird, her little hands still shaking, something hard and cold clicked into place in my mind. For 27 years, I'd been swallowing all the favoritism, the gaslighting, and the humiliation. But they had laid hands on me in front of my child and then told her it was my fault. They made me bleed and then watched me clean it up. They handed my abuser a beer and told him he was justified. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I studied because if there's one thing I learned working in child protection, it's that when you want to ruin someone legally and completely, you don't throw punches, you build an airtight case. That night, after Piper finally fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started documenting everything. Every slight, every incident, every pattern of abuse I'd normalized over the years. I had a degree in social work and 5 years of experience building cases against people who hurt children. I knew exactly how to weaponize the truth. 3 days later, Angela handed me something precious. A USB drive with security footage from my front porch camera. Crystal clear video of Ryan punching me in the face, Piper's terrified screams, and my mother calling me dramatic while I bled on the lawn. But I didn't call the police. Not yet. I had something much better planned. See, Ryan had big dreams. City council, maybe mayor someday, eventually congressman if he played his cards right. He was already building his future public servant brand on social media, complete with staged coffee shop photos where he pretended to read policy papers, fake LinkedIn job titles, and business cards that read Ryan Whitlock, future public servant. He'd started a local young leaders podcast, posted carefully curated photos with veterans, and even gave speeches at community cleanup drives. My mother was behind every shot, snapping pictures like a proud stage manager, editing his social media posts, and networking with local political wives. They were building his image while I was building his demolition. I'm a social worker, and I know how to build cases that destroy people legally and permanently. Ryan had just handed me the perfect ammunition, and I was about to use every resource at my disposal. First, I contacted CPS anonymously, building a comprehensive file on domestic violence witnessed by a child, family enabling patterns, and psychological trauma. I documented everything. The footage, witness testimony from Angela, medical records from the hospital, even a letter from Piper's preschool teacher describing concerning behavior and anxiety after family visits. Then I reached out to my college friend Simone, who worked at a local media outlet that specialized in investigative journalism. "I have a story," I told her over coffee, sliding a thick manila folder across the table. "About a local political hopeful who thinks assault is acceptable family bonding." While I was methodically gathering evidence, Ryan's political ambitions were reaching new heights. He announced his city council campaign with a professionally produced video featuring him walking through downtown, talking to small business owners, and ending with a shot of him playing catch with neighborhood kids while talking about family values and community integrity. The video went live on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, he had endorsements from 3 local business leaders and a feature article in the community newspaper about young leaders making a difference. My parents were over the moon, sharing every post, commenting on every photo, treating his campaign launch like he'd already won the presidency. But while they were celebrating, I was working. I'd connected with two other women from Ryan's past who had their own stories to tell. One was his ex-girlfriend Sarah, who still had screenshots of threatening text messages from when she tried to break up with him. The other was a former co-worker who had witnessed reports of Ryan's violent outbursts at his last job, the real reason he'd been laid off. I also discovered something fascinating. Ryan had been inflating his resume. That volunteer coordinator position at the local homeless shelter? He'd shown up twice. Those leadership seminars he claimed to have organized? He'd attended as a participant, not an organizer. His entire political persona was built on lies, and I had the documentation to prove it. Simone's article dropped on a Friday morning like a nuclear bomb. Local political candidate caught on camera assaulting woman at family barbecue, mother seen covering up incident. The video went viral within hours. Not just locally, nationally. #GoldenBoyBruiser started trending on Twitter. The Ring doorbell footage was crystal clear. Ryan's face contorted with rage, the sickening crack of impact, my body hitting the ground, blood pooling on the grass, and most damning of all, my mother rushing to comfort him while I lay there bleeding. But the real genius was in the timing. Simone had coordinated with other journalists, and by noon 3 more stories had dropped. Sarah's piece about the threatening texts, the workplace incident reports, and a deep dive into Ryan's fabricated resume that revealed he'd been lying about his qualifications for months. Ryan's campaign didn't just die. It exploded in the most public, humiliating way possible. His phone was buzzing non-stop with reporters wanting statements. His campaign manager quit via text message. The local business leaders who had endorsed him released a joint statement, withdrawing their support pending investigation. Social media was ruthless. Someone had created a compilation video set to dramatic music showing Ryan's campaign promises about family values, juxtaposed with the footage of him breaking his sister's nose. It had 500,000 views by evening. Once the dam broke, the flood was unstoppable. People started digging into Ryan's past like bloodhounds scenting weakness. Unpaid debts surfaced. Parking tickets he'd fought in court and lost. A civil lawsuit from a landlord over property damage that he'd settled out of court. And then the big one. That restraining order from his ex-girlfriend 3 years ago that had mysteriously been sealed. Someone, not me I swear, had leaked it to a legal blogger who specialized in exposing public figures with hidden legal troubles. The details were horrifying. Stalking, harassment, showing up at her workplace, threatening her friends. Ryan tried damage control with a desperate public statement claiming the footage was taken out of context, and that family disagreements shouldn't define leadership capability. He hired a crisis management firm that charged him $5,000 to basically tell him he was screwed. But the avalanche wasn't finished. More victims came forward. His high school girlfriend posted on Instagram about the time he'd shoved her into a locker. A former roommate shared stories about Ryan's explosive temper and the holes he'd punched in their apartment walls. Each story was another nail in the coffin of his political ambitions. His followers dwindled from 12,000 to 847, and most of those were hate watchers and journalists monitoring his meltdown. Brand deals vanished overnight. The podcast that had been his platform for political discourse shut down when sponsors fled. The future mayor was suddenly just a disgraced man with a mountain of debt and his angry, violent face plastered across every news outlet in the state. I filed no contact orders not just against Ryan, but against my parents too. I'd already cut them off emotionally, but now it was legal and permanent. My daughter deserved better than a toxic family that blamed victims for their own abuse. She wasn't going to grow up in the same poisoned garden that had nearly destroyed me. But I had one final nail to hammer into their coffin. Remember that guest house Ryan lived in on my parents' property? I discovered that my parents had secretly refinanced their home to pay off Ryan's mounting debts the year before. They were already teetering on the edge of financial ruin, one missed payment away from disaster. I found the documents when Mom accidentally included me in an old email chain while trying to coordinate Ryan's damage control. They had already defaulted once and were desperately trying to restructure their payments while Ryan's legal fees mounted from the crisis management team and the defamation lawyer he'd hired to threaten his ex-girlfriends into silence. So I made a carefully worded anonymous tip to the bank about possible insurance fraud and violations of loan forgiveness terms. Nothing illegal on my part, just a concerned citizen reporting potential financial irregularities that deserved investigation. 2 months later, a bright yellow foreclosure notice appeared on their front lawn like a badge of shame. Ryan had to move in with some girl who sold crystals and burned sage for a living in a studio apartment above a head shop. My parents tried staying with various relatives, but most said no because word travels fast in small communities, especially when you're caught on camera laughing over your daughter's broken face. The day Ryan officially lost his legal appeal was the day I knew my revenge was complete. He tried to sue several news outlets for defamation, claiming the video was edited and the stories were lies. But when you have multiple witnesses, medical records, and crystal-clear footage, the truth has a way of standing firm. His last desperate attempt was a live stream where he tried to claim I'd orchestrated everything out of jealousy, that I'd somehow manipulated the footage and had a personal vendetta against his success. But then more victims started calling into the stream, sharing their own stories in real time. He ended up shutting it down after 20 minutes when the comments became a tsunami of support for his victims and condemnation of his violence.